Hello, everyone, and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. So, I'm back for another Have Your Say video, and this video is for RuPaul's Drag Race Season 17, Episode 11, and it's where you get to vote on whether you agree with the outcome of the episode.
Yes, we all know!
So, today we're going to be reviewing the episode, going through the result of the Have Your Say poll, and I'll be talking about a little bit of light drama to do with Mistress Isabelle Brooks clapping back at Dawn over something that Dawn said about Mistress. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. But before we dive in, I want to dive into the tasty sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. I know you all love Drag Race tea, but what about adding some real breakfast to your tea? Because breakfast is the most important meal of the day, HelloFresh is giving all subscribers free breakfast for life. That means you'll enjoy a totally free breakfast item with every single HelloFresh delivery. What I love about meal boxes is that they take all the guesswork out of meal times. They deliver everything you need in a box right to your front door with full recipe cards. So all you have to do is follow the simple recipe instructions and you'll discover a whole new world of delicious recipes. HelloFresh's biggest ever dinner menu has over 50 plus options to choose from, which cater to many dietary requirements and lifestyles, such as fit and wholesome, family friendly, quick and easy, vegetarian, and more. The subscription is also totally flexible and can be adjusted to suit your personal schedule, and you can even pause or skip boxes if needed. Click the link in the caption or use my code and get 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. One breakfast item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. Outside the US, the local discount will apply. And thank you again to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Okay, so we find out that the main challenge for this week is an acting challenge. Now, I have talked many times on this channel about my feelings on scripted acting challenges.
Not this again.
Yes, this again.
My issue is that usually they're not that great in terms of the script, and there's not much the queens can do if the script is not great. So I would personally prefer things like improv challenges, but hey, I'm not the one making the decisions, but this acting challenge was actually not too bad. We find out that the show is called Ross Mathews versus the Ducks, which is a parody of the new show Feud, Capote and the Swans. Now, I'm not familiar with Truman Capote at all. They did sort of explain it in the episode, but I did actually do a little bit of research, or in other words, I went on Wikipedia and read the article. But I did do a little bit of research just to familiarize myself with Truman Capote before I watched the episode. I literally paused it and was like, who is Truman Capote? Because I personally had never heard of him. So just for any of you that don't know, Truman Capote was an author, novelist. He was born in, I think, the 1920s and then died in like the 80s. He was quite big in sort of the 60s, 70s. He was really good friends with a lot of these New York elite women, like really high society women. And he referred to them as his swans, which is obviously why the parody is the ducks, because it's like swans. And then Truman Capote was kind of a bit of a modern day gossip girl, sort of like he knew all these high society women and they told him all their dirty secrets and all of that sort of thing. And then he was supposed to write a book, which he ultimately never finished. And then part of the book, or at least a chapter of it, got published in Esquire. And in that chapter, he wrote a fictionalized version of events of a group of high society women and spilling all their secrets. But obviously he had used the secrets of the real people that he was friends with, all of these women. And so all of the women then basically ostracized Truman Capote and kind of vowed revenge on him. And he effectively shot himself in the foot because he kind of got pushed out and it was pretty much the end of his career as he knew it. And so there's a new TV show that came out at the beginning of this year, which is based on that. Now, I was a bit curious because they're obviously basing it, I would say, more on the TV show rather than the real events of what happened. But the show only came out a few months before they would have probably started shooting this season. So the only thing I can think of is either they were hoping that the queens would just kind of go along with it, or maybe they had seen it. But what it got me thinking was, I remember that one time I saw Kitty Scott-Claus from UK season 3 in an interview once, and she said that on her season on UK 3, they actually gave them a reading list or a watch list of things that they should watch before Drag Race. And apparently things like Paris is burning and, things like that they always talk about, or the Wizard of Oz, some of those things they reference a lot on Drag Race. But also, apparently on the reading list for theirs was Star Wars. And Kitty Scott Claus had never seen Star Wars, so she watched it because they kind of told them to. And then it ended up that on season 3 of UK, they did a parody acting challenge of Star Wars. So that kind of made me think, I wonder whether the queens were told they needed to watch this series or at least familiarize themselves with who Truman Capote is. This is just a guess. I don't think this has been confirmed, but it was just an interesting theory, I thought, based on what I'd heard other queens say. But let me know in the comments, had you heard of Truman Capote before this, and would you have known what that is? Or do you think it just doesn't really matter? You can kind of just go along with it. Okay, so obviously we saw that they actually recorded it, and there was obviously, the usual thing of some queens were shown to be struggling, some queens weren't. They obviously were throwing in hints of certain queens being unprepared or not doing very well. But we all know on Drag Race that that kind of doesn't matter hugely because quite often in the final edit, it will be different. So I'll skip forward.
Oh, thank God.
And then I'm now going to talk about the final cut of the acting challenge that we saw. And I'll go through each queen's performance in order in which they appeared. Before we start, though, one of the things that I saw so many comments on was about Ross Mathews, because obviously he played Truman Capote. So many people were saying they thought Ross was so bad. People in the comments on the Have Your Say poll were saying that Ross should have been eliminated because he was so bad. Now, I'm not sure if people were just saying this because they just don't like Ross Mathews, so they were just kind of using it as an excuse. Personally, I will say I didn't really mind his performance. I thought he did a fine job of what we would expect. I don't know much about Truman Capote, but I knew he was this kind of gay gossip girl type person. And so I think Ross did that quite well, and the voice and the mannerisms are what you would kind of expect from someone like that. So I personally think people were being a bit overly harsh. Also, Ross is a judge. He's not on the show. He's not a competitor. So arguably it doesn't really matter. So I did think people were being a bit overly harsh about it because ultimately, who cares? Because he's not the one being judged. Okay, so first up was Lana Gerey. I actually quite enjoyed Lana's performance. I was slightly concerned at first because acting has not necessarily been her thing so far in the season. She wasn't maybe as big as she could have been. I think she's still, obviously, you could tell maybe she's not the most natural at it compared to some other people, but I actually thought she did a decent job. She did her lines. I thought she was actually quite funny. So I personally would give it a yay, maybe towards the just okay side, because I do think it wasn't as big as it could have been, but it was perfectly good, and it was definitely better than what I was expecting. And you voted mostly for just okay and then a decent amount of yay, which I would say aligns with what I said as well. Then we had Anya Nerve. I think it was so obvious that Anya was going to do well. She's done well in every acting challenge, or just every challenge in general, pretty much. Anya has personality literally for days, so she did so well. She was possibly my favorite. She had so much energy. I loved the little touches she put in, like the tapping of the nails on the breastplate, and she just kind of hit every single line, really found the funny in every single line. So yeah, for me, this was probably my favorite, so this was definitely a yay. And you agreed with over 96% of you voting for yay as well. Then we had Sam Starr. I really enjoyed Sam's performance. She definitely encapsulated the character. She, I think, did a really good performance. She was able to play different sides and kind of react to people. So yeah, I would give this a yay. And I really liked that she took her own kind of spin on the character and gave it what it needed to be given. And almost 80% of you gave a yay as well. And then there was a decent amount of just okay, but yay was still the majority. Then we had Lydia B. Collins. Now, this one was a little bit more tricky for me to actually decide. I don't think it was the best performance because I do think she was a little bit more wooden, perhaps. Like she looked like she was trying to remember her lines constantly, which I can totally understand, especially with a scripted acting challenge. But I do think she maybe missed some of the punchlines and some of the jokes and really had to push them to get them through, but they just didn't quite get there. I really think she could have made this character really funny. As Cheyenne Jackson, the director in this case, was really trying to pull her out this particular line about, the prostate wants what the prostate wants, and she just wasn't quite hitting it the way it needed to be. So I would unfortunately have to give this a just okay, because I don't think it was good enough for a yay, but I don't think it was bad enough for a nay either. It was somewhere in the middle. And you seem to agree with over 60% saying just okay. And then the next part was almost 30% with nay. So yeah, I would have to agree. It was a just okay, but more towards the nay side. Next, we had Susie Toot. I loved Susie. I thought she was just such a natural actress, or thespian, as you could say.
A thespian lesbian.
And I just really enjoyed her. She's obviously in her element doing this sort of thing, being campy and fun or whatever. So I did really enjoy the performance and I thought that she really nailed it. So I don't know if I was maybe thinking she was as good as some of the others thought that she was, because they all seemed quite intimidated by her. But she was still good, so I would definitely give her a yay. And almost 3/4 of you voted for yay, and then the rest pretty much was just okay. So I would agree. It was a yay, but maybe with a tiny bit of just okay. Then we had Lexi Love. For this one, I was a little bit almost conflicted and I didn't quite know what to think about it, because in the actual filming part, we saw that Lexi was in her head and she messed up quite a lot. But in the final edit, she did really well and she looked really good, sounded really good, hit all the jokes and everything. So it's difficult to judge because I don't think it was the best, but it wasn't the worst. It was certainly a lot better than I thought it was going to be based on what we'd seen in the filming part of it. I would have to give it, though, maybe a just okay, because I do think that from what we saw in the filming, she did get in her head, and I think she could have pushed it a little bit further, but she didn't do as badly as I thought she might. So I would give this a just okay, maybe towards the yay side, because it was still good. And over half of you voted just okay, so that was the majority, and then around 32% said yay. And then finally we had Jules Sparkles. Now, this was the role that she really wanted and she fought for, and I was really excited for this role because she was obviously doing the monologue based on Tiffany New York Pollard talking about Gemma Collins on Big Brother. And I think we all know that monologue, and if you don't know it, you should go and check it out because it is so funny. She read Gemma Collins for absolute filth. Like, she literally started off being like,
pretty much I will let Gemma know that she is a fat
it's so, watching it back is so funny. I'll see if I can find it and I'll link to it in the description because it is just such a ridiculously funny monologue. So I was very excited to see what Jules was going to do. I just don't think it kind of went anywhere, though. I think she got in her head, maybe because she was waiting so long and she kind of got tired, but she kept making mistakes. She kept, I think, doing the original lines from the monologue, but that wasn't the lines in the show. And I also just found she was doing too many tongue pops and pausing between the monologues, and it kind of then lost the meaning of the monologue for me. So I would have to give this a just okay, maybe towards the nay side, because I do think it had a lot of potential, and I don't think Jules quite pushed it to its full potential. And it seemed like you agree, with over 55% saying just okay, but then almost 40% saying nay. So I would agree with that. And then moving on to the slay for the performance, as in who gave the best performance. And we had 74.2% for Anya Nerve, 10.9% for Susie Toot, and 10.7% for Sam Starr, with Lexi Love getting 2.3%. I would definitely agree. I loved Anya's performance. She was so natural, so funny. She's got charisma for literally days, weeks, months, years. I do think she was by far the best in this particular skit, so I would agree. Okay, so now let's go through the runway, and the theme was black and white ball, so basically black and white. So first up we had Sam Starr. I loved this look. I thought it was so well made. I loved the mask and the kind of, I don't know, not circus, it's not quite the right word, but that kind of, it's almost like a Venetian mask or a like Mardi Gras outfit or something, that sort of style.
You don't know what you're talking about.
It is just so well made. I loved the different panels that she had of the different colors. It was just so eye-catching. She sold it really well. The makeup also worked so well with it. So this was definitely a yay for me. And it seemed like you agreed, with over 80% saying yay, and then only 15.9% for just okay. Next up, we had Lana Duray. I did like this look, and I thought it was very classic. She did look amazing. I really liked the makeup and the hair she did with it, and the big puffy sleeves. We all love a big puff. My only slight thing is I thought the bottom half could have done with something else, because it was effectively just some kind of polka dot style leggings. I did think it kind of looked really big and amazing on top, but then the bottom is just not quite as good. But I guess it depends. Do you like a big top and a non-existent bottom? But yeah, I thought she looked pretty, but it maybe wasn't as opulent as some of the other ones. So I think I would have to give this a just okay, but she still looked good. And it seemed like you agreed because the biggest proportion was just okay with 43%, but then a decent amount of yays with 34%. Next up, we had On Your Nerve. I thought it was such a funny coincidence that this episode was literally based on Truman Capote and the Swans, and Anya had a swan on her hat. I'm assuming that was just a pure coincidence, but to me that was just kind of funny. The outfit in general, I liked the idea, maybe not quite so much the execution. I do think that the new stage, as I've said before, because it's so dark, it does swallow up a lot of the darker colors. So I think her dress didn't quite pop that much because it was mostly sort of dark colors and then the little bit in the middle. And I just think it could have maybe been elevated a little bit as well. So it was okay, but it's not my favorite outfit that Anya has worn. So I would have to give this a just okay. And it looks like you agreed because almost half with 46% said just okay, but then a decent amount of yays with 31%, but then also a decent amount of nays with 22%. After that, we had Lydia B. Collins. I really enjoyed this look. I think it was very quintessential Lydia because it was a bit wacky and kooky, but also still really fashionable. I really liked the different textures, like she had the fur, a corset sort of thing, a bit more fur than a corset. So I enjoyed the fact there was almost like different tiers of the look. And I thought it gave very opulent and rich with those hanging fur bit. Is that called a stole? Is that what it's called?
No, it's not.
I know the University of Fashion is going to call and revoke my 9 PhDs. Anyway, I liked that. It was giving very rich, opulent woman, but then with a side of kookiness as well. So I would give this a yay. And it looks like you agreed because almost 70% said yay, but then over a quarter said just okay. Then we had Susie Toot. I loved this look, and maybe I am a cat person, so maybe that's what it is, but I really, really loved this outfit. I think it was so amazingly done. I thought the way it moved, the way it sort of caught the light, the makeup, the little headpiece, everything was just mwah. I was literally like the cat that got the cream with this outfit. So yeah, I loved this so much. I know some of the judges said they thought it was like needed to be cinched more at the waist. Maybe, but I still think this was a fabulous look and something maybe I wasn't expecting from Susie. But yeah, this was by far a yay for me. Interestingly, although 64% of you did vote for yay, 27% said just okay, which I was a little bit baffled by personally. So clearly some of you thought this was a catastrophe. Thank you, I'm here all week. Next up, we had Lexi Love. This was not my favorite Lexi outfit, I'm afraid. I thought the colors and everything were okay, and the way she did it, the makeup looked really nice, and the headpiece. I just think it was far too short. It kind of just looked like she forgot the bottom half of it. And I know the judges mentioned this last week or in a previous week, and they mentioned it again this week, that Lexi loves a train or something that she drags behind her. And I agree that it's maybe getting slightly repetitive now, that it's quite often a similar style or a similar silhouette. So I think I might have to give this a just okay, maybe even a nay, because this was probably my least favorite. Lexi usually looks amazing on the runway, so I was kind of surprised. But yeah, her legs looked great, but a good pair of legs does not a yay make, unfortunately. Interestingly, you mostly voted for just okay with 43.7%, but then almost an equal amount of 37% said nay, so I would have to agree with that. Then finally, we had Jules Sparkles. Now, this was another cat-themed outfit, so of course I'm gonna like it. I loved this. This was up there for me for my favorites. I adored it. It was so amazing. The way it was styled, the way it was obviously a suit, but it was the way she played with it, and it was kind of deconstructed. I loved the makeup, the hair, the little ears. Everything was just mwah. I absolutely loved this outfit. So I would definitely give this a yay. And it seems that you agreed with 88.7% saying yay and then only 10.7% saying just okay. And then 0.5% of you voted nay. So I would like to see that 0.5 of you in my office, please.
The guy doesn't even have an office.
Okay, so then I asked about the sleigh, as in who had the best outfit, and you voted 40% for Jules Sparkles, 24.5% for Sam Starr, and then Susie Toot got 17.2, and Lydia B. Collins got 11.6. I think I would have to give it to Jules, though, just because it did fit her so well. It looked amazing. It was cat themed. It just had everything going for it, and she did look amazing. So yeah, I think I would have to give it to Jules. Okay, so on the main stage, we then had what is usually my favorite part of the season, which is the question, who should go home tonight and why?
I'll tell you why. Because you are a mean girl. You're a...
Now, let me just pause for a minute because this one really, really worked me out because this one was possibly one of the worst versions of this that we've ever had. I don't want to get on my soapbox too much, but it annoys me so much that the queens pick their biggest competition. It's, to me, such a cop-out that the queens say this. I really wish that RuPaul had stepped in and said something like, give me a real answer. Because this has happened before. Do you remember on season 2 when Tatiana said she was going to vote for Morgan because Morgan had immunity? And RuPaul literally was like,
Tatiana, that's an answer for the Miss America contest, not the RuPaul Drag Race contest.
why is RuPaul not saying that now? It was so boring to hear them all vote for Susie 2 or whoever it was and say it was their biggest competition. I will say, though, I don't necessarily blame the queens because we know that they don't want to come across as being mean because, unfortunately, a lot of people online are going to attack them if they say anything mean. So they want to try and stay as neutral as possible, I guess. But it does just make really boring TV. Let me know in the comments, though, do you think they should change the question to be who deserves to go home rather than just who should go home and why? And do you think RuPaul should specify you can't pick your biggest competition? Okay, so we find out that the winner of the episode is On Your Nerve. And as I said, I do agree. She was by far the best in the challenge. And it seems that you agreed because over 82% of you also voted that you agreed, yes, I agreed with the winner. But then of that 17.4% that said no, I asked if you selected no, as in you did not agree with the winner, who should have won instead? And of that small percentage of people that voted, 50.3 voted for Sam Starr, 39.8 for Susie Toot, and then Lexi got 5.6 and Lana got 1.9. We then find out that the bottom two for this week are Lana and Lydia. And in terms of the Have Your Say poll, I asked, did you agree with the bottom two? And 57.6% said no, and 42.4% said yes. So actually, most of you did not agree with the bottom two. And then moving on, so of the people who did not agree, I said, who do you think should have been in the bottom instead? And you voted 64.5% for Jules Sparkles, 32.1% for Lexi Love, and weirdly 1.9% for Susie Toot. Now, I do sort of agree in a way. I do wonder whether Jules should have been in the bottom because I do think she was maybe the worst in the actual challenge. I do think her runway saved her though because her runway was amazing. But on the other hand, I think if you take into account Lydia definitely deserved the bottom because I think she was also one of the worst in the challenge. Lana did, I think, quite decently in the challenge. Not the best, but sort of middle of the pack. But I guess overall, Lana doesn't have a win. So from the track record side, I do think Lana deserved the bottom, but not for the challenge though, more just for her overall track record. So Lana and Lydia then lip sync to the song Unholy by Sam Smith, who was the guest judge this week. And Lana is announced as the winner of the lip sync, which means unfortunately Lydia is told to sashay away. Now, this lip sync was wild. The big thing was the scissors. Like, those scissors really were her saboteur this week, and it kind of reminded me of when Susie Toot did her Snatch Game thing, and she also talked about scissors. So clearly scissors are just cursed in season 17. I personally think that Lydia would definitely have won the lip sync if she hadn't done the scissors because it was just really awkward to watch. When she started it and they just weren't cutting it, I thought, first of all, are these scissors literally made of like soap or something? Like what? They must be the dullest scissors I've ever seen in the world. If it were me, as soon as I saw that they weren't really cutting, I probably would have just thrown it away and just tried to kind of forget and make out like I didn't do that. But the fact that she kept trying, she was sort of getting caught up in it. At one point, you do just have to kind of lay down and just accept defeat and throw it away. She was determined, I'll give her that, but it was just kind of awkward to watch. And I literally was like doing this, watching it because it was so awkward. And I felt so bad for Lydia because it did cost her the lip sync. Otherwise, I think she would have won if she didn't do the scissors. So the lesson of this, folks, is do not do scissors. In terms of the Have Your Say poll, I asked who do you think won the lip sync, and 82.9% said Lana and 17.1% said Lydia. So I was very sad to see Lydia go because I did think she was going to go further than that, but I do think it was ultimately a fair decision. And I'm hoping that she sort of looks back on this and she thinks, oh, you know, it was a mistake. I didn't know that it wasn't going to work out, but, you know, life moves on. My butthole will go on, as the Titanic song almost said. My butthole Okay, so moving on to the last two questions. Question 8 was, who do you want to win the season? And Anya Nerve got 43.1%. Then it was Susie Toot with 18.2%. Jules Sparkles was next with 15%. Then it was Sam with 12.7% and Lexi with 10.6%. So although Anya got the most, it was still kind of split between the rest of them. But then for question 9, it was, who do you think will win the season? And Anya got a staggering 83%, with Lexi only getting 6.6, Sam getting 5.4, and Susie getting 2.9. But let me know in the comments, what do you think would need to happen in order for Anya to be kind of knocked off that top space? Okay, so let's move on to the comments for this week, and I'll start with my Patreon comments. There were a lot of comments, as you can imagine, about the scissors and Lydia. For example, Riot said, not Lydia struggling with the scissors. I felt like she was going home when she pulled them out, but then things just got worse. Ada also said they were heartbroken when the scissors didn't work because it feels like Lydia was totally going to win and would have stayed. And Rhodey was like, guys, the scissors, it broke my heart watching Lydia because I knew she could have served. Although my Patreon Nat doesn't quite agree and said, really wish Lana went home served Lydia. Even with the scissor malfunction, Lydia was better in my opinion because of her looks and things like that. My Patreon Kerry was taking no prisoners and said, great episode. I do think Anya's dress was ugly. But her performance was 100%. My patron Brynx Quinn had an interesting take and said, despite what the judges said, I don't think Lana was overshadowed by Anya in the challenge. And I will agree, I don't think she was overshadowed as much as they were making out. I think anyone would have been overshadowed by Anya because she is just such a force of nature and she's so good at it. But I actually think Lana held her own better than I thought she was going to. So yeah, I actually kind of agree with that. And my other Patreon member, Bipolar Express, said the critique that she was steamrolled by Anya was valid, but to be honest, anyone in her scene would have probably been steamrolled. And in terms of the comments from the Have Your Say poll, so many of you mentioned the scissors, saying even with the scissors, Lydia had a better lip sync than Lana, but people saying that Lana didn't win the lip sync, Lydia just lost it. The scissor trick was unfortunate. If Lydia hadn't done it, she probably would have stayed, as RuPaul was already laughing at her antics. But someone had a very interesting take, almost a little bit conspiracy theory-ish, and said, I'm wondering if the scissors were sabotaged and were faulty, so Lydia would have trouble and it would give production something. I'm not sure if that's the case. I mean, the scissors did look dull AF in terms of the sharpness of it. And I am surprised that maybe Lydia hadn't thought about that, because trying to cut that fabric, I think anyone, even if you're not a fashion expert like I am with 10 PhDs in fashion. By the way, I got an extra PhD since the last time, that's why it's 10. But I think using scissors to try and cut that fabric is going to be really difficult, and I'm kind of surprised that as a seamstress, Lydia didn't think about that. But I don't think that production sabotaged her. I don't think it was anything to do with that. I think Lydia just accidentally sabotaged herself.
It seems like sabotage. Feels like sabotage. If the saboteur wants to get out of my way.
Also, thank you so much for the lovely comments that I get on my Have Your Say poll. I do try and read all of them, although I can't always show all of them. But it is just such a breath of fresh air to get some really lovely positive comments on the Have Your Say poll. So thank you all so much. And thank you so much to everyone who commented on the last video saying how much they love this style of video with like the cutaways and like me showing a bit more of my personality. I do really try and like, you know, do different things, switch it up, have a bit of fun. The cutaways do take me ages to try and find sometimes, and the editing is kind of difficult.
Literally, no one cares.
But thank you so much for the kind comments. I really do truly appreciate it. It's so lovely to read them. So we're now going to move on to a little bit of light drama that happened, where Mistress Isabelle Brooks called out Dawn for something that Dawn had said about Mistress. So what happened was, a few weeks ago, Dawn from season 16 appeared on the Sloppy Seconds podcast, which is hosted by Big Dipper and Meatball. They started talking about season 15 contestant Mistress Isabelle Brooks, and Dawn said she had some tea to spill about the time that Dawn appeared on Mistress's YouTube channel.
You and Mistress need to get together.
We did. We filmed a YouTube video
Big
together.
fan. Which one?
Well, can I tell some tea about that? Do you think she'll get mad?
Dawn is referring to a video that she did with Mistress, which also included Nymphia Wind. And the video was posted in February 2024 called Mistress Isabelle Brooks Transforms Dawn into a Woman, which I'll link to in the description.
So she flies us in a day early and we're like, what time? She's like 6, like something, you know, like whatever. 6 o'clock rolls around. She's like, we're going to push back to like 9. Then I think she picks us up around like 9:30. We get to her studio at like 10. And then she did Nymphia's video first from like 10 until like 3 a.m. And then did mine from like 3:30 until like 5.
And because it went on so late with the filming, Dawn said about it, quote, "I hate this video."
I watched that back and I was like, I hate this video because I am like sick of it. I'm so exhausted.
The Sloppy Seconds podcast posted this clip as a YouTube short, as well as on TikTok and their Twitter account, which then got a lot of traction. By the way, I'll link in the description to the full interview that they did with Dawn on YouTube. Anyway, after this short clip got a lot of traction on social media, people then started commenting about it. Some people said that Dawn was unnecessarily complaining and she was paid to do the gig, so she was making too much of it. However, other people supported Dawn and started tagging Mistress, saying that she shouldn't have treated Dawn and Nymphia like that. Seemingly in response to this criticism, Dawn reposted the video on Twitter and said, "Just gonna say this now before y'all start acting crazy. This was meant to be a silly story. The whole time she was being very professional and making sure that we were down for what was going on. We were on board the whole time for the late shooting and it was fun. When I say that sucked, I was referring to the fact that I wished I was in a better mood when we filmed my video because I thought I could have been funnier, and literally even say that the point of the story was to say I wanted to do a redo. Mistress is very professional." And then some people in the comments said that Dawn was backpedaling. I also noticed that on the original video with Dawn on Mistress's channel, which is over a year old by this point, the video received a bunch of new comments after this podcast clip came out, with people mentioning what Dawn had said about them filming from 3 till 5 a.m. And up till that point, Mistress didn't really seem to respond to the situation at first. But a while later, Mistress did talk about it in a live video, and the TikTok account called Up Till Dawn posted a screen recording of that portion of Mistress's live. And by the way, this TikTok account is not Dawn's account. This is what looks like a Dawn fan account. So the video is several minutes long, so I'll just summarize the main parts. At first, Mistress joked that she wasn't going to talk about it because so many people on the live were asking her about the Dawn situation, but then she laughed and said she would talk about it. She mentioned the Sloppy Seconds podcast and said that she has been asked to be on that podcast multiple times, as well as other podcasts such as Very Delta and Race Chaser, as well as other YouTube channels. But because Mistress is a, quote, upcoming girl with her YouTube and things like that, she doesn't want to give her content away for free to other people.
Why would I give you my time for your platform if I can make all the money off of it and do it for myself and do it the way I want it to be done? You know what I mean? So I'm not, and it's different if I'm getting paid to do something. It's different if you're booking me and doing X, Y, and Z.
Mistress then referenced the hosts of Sloppy Seconds, Big Dipper and Meatball, and what they had said about Mistress ghosting them and not replying to them.
No, that goes off on everybody.
Okay, you're right.
And
so
she keeps
Mistress...
flaking on us.
Oh.
Yeah, you fat.
Well, she's not
Not
so
anymore.
anymore.
Mistress said she's very professional, so she wouldn't do that. And she also said that the other thing that annoys her is when people, quote, use my name for clickbait.
I don't like when people use my name for clickbait. And obviously I do the same thing. It's very I'm very Wendy Williams tease where she's like, I'm not gonna tell people to stop talking about me because I talk about people. It's very that. But when you're doing clickbait over something you know is gonna lead to people talking about me, or like if you knew people are gonna jump on have a hate boner for me, why would you post that and then try to be my friend and text me on the side? And not Don, I'm talking about Dipper and Meatball.
Mistress then said that she's cool with Big Dipper and Meatball, but she doesn't mind blocking people if need be. After that, Mistress addressed what Dawn had said about the filming being so late. Mistress explained that Dawn and Nymphia were one of her first guests on her YouTube channel, so she was still figuring stuff out. And she clarified that everyone gets paid for coming on her channel, or they receive some kind of compensation, which is all agreed with that person beforehand. Mistress then said she's not mad at Dawn for what she said, but she questioned why you would say that when you know people will use it as an excuse to be hateful. Mistress then said it's none of your business how they film and they're all adults and getting paid. She also said that if you watch the full interview on Sloppy Seconds and not just the clip, you can see that Dawn was just telling a silly story and it wasn't that serious, which is why Mistress didn't respond to it at first. Mistress then ended by saying that she's blocked them, but she didn't exactly make it clear who she's blocked.
I don't know. It just made me feel really weird that some people who I would consider at least like acquaintances would like make a little clickbaity like Mistress Hate Train kind of video, and I just didn't like it, so I blocked them, and it's no tea.
I also saw that Dawn herself commented on this TikTok clip and said, "Am I the drama?" The reaction to Mistress's comments in the live video were mixed, with some people supporting Mistress and agreeing that they were all consenting adults and they shouldn't be using Mistress's name for clickbait. But other people criticized Mistress, saying she was being hypocritical and that she can dish it out but can't take it. But that seems to be the end of the situation as far as I can tell. But as I always say, please do not send hate to the queens. Just consume this type of content passively and don't get involved. The queens can sort this sort of thing out for themselves, and it's really not okay to send hate or get involved. So there you go, there was the Have Your Say video for RuPaul's Drag Race Season 17, Episode 11. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on scripted acting challenges, and also let me know who do you think is going to win the season and why. I'd also like to say thank you so much to everyone who signed up to my Patreon, but also my existing Patreon members. You are all absolutely amazing. Your support every month is just honestly the lifeblood of this channel. I love speaking to you in the Have Your Say poll posts. I love talking to you in the exclusive Patreon chat. I love this community so much. So thank you all so much for your support. It truly does mean so much. And if you'd like to get early access to my videos, exclusive content, having your comments featured in my Have Your Say poll, as well as a raft of other benefits, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It just costs a few dollars a month and it really does make a huge difference to me and my channel. So I'll put a link in the description. Please go and check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me in the future for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye.